The Commonwealth of Massachusetts is the most famous state in New England. This comes from a rich history and the foundation of the United States, with part of the Appalachian mountain range in the west connecting to the heavily urbanized region in the east and the famous hook that juts out into the Atlantic Ocean. I have traveled in the Boston metropolitan area twice, and it proves vital to the economic heart of New England. Massachusetts is one out of 4 states that calls himself a commonwealth, along with Pennsylvania, Kentucky, and Virginia. It means the exact same as a state, just a different name. So I wanted to get that out of the way if you were confused about it during the video. You will hear me refer to it as both, just depending on how I feel like saying it in that sentence. Massachusetts is located in the northeastern, or most famously known as New England region of the United States. Massachusetts borders 5 states with Rhode Island, Connecticut to the south, New York to the west, Vermont and New Hampshire to the north, and the Gulf of Maine and Atlantic Ocean to the east. Massachusetts was admitted to the Union on February 6, 1788, making it the 6th state in the country. Before it was a part of the United States, it was the province of Massachusetts Bay. The state takes its name from the Massachusetts tribe, which were Native Americans who lived just south of Boston. The Indian term is translated to at or about the Great Hill, with Massachusetts' east coast being bordered in many bays, giving it the nickname the Bay State. Like all the other states that I've covered in the series, Massachusetts is fully in the Eastern time zone. With its location up in the northeast, Massachusetts is one of the first states to see the sunrise. The state motto of Massachusetts, which I'm not going to try to say, means by the sword we seek peace, but peace only under liberty. Massachusetts has one of the most famous cities in the world as its capital, and that's Boston. With a population just under 700,000 people, Boston is the 8th most populated capital in the nation, behind Oklahoma City and ahead of Sacramento, California. Boston is also the biggest city in the state and is the 24th largest in the country, ahead of Las Vegas and behind Washington, D.C. Greater Boston is the largest metropolitan area in Massachusetts and in New England. Almost 5 million people live in the Greater Boston area, making it the 10th largest in the country in 2020. The population has decreased in the Greater Boston area, and it is estimated that the Phoenix metropolitan area has passed Boston, making it now the 11th largest in 2023. With its location in New England, Massachusetts is surrounded by some of the smallest states in the nation, and it's no exception. Massachusetts has a total area of 10,554.39 square miles, making it the 7th smallest state, just behind Hawaii and ahead of Vermont. 7,800 of that is land area, making it the 6th least behind New Hampshire and ahead of New Jersey. Massachusetts covers a large amount of water area, with over 2,000 square miles, making it the 16th most behind Virginia and ahead of Utah. In 2020, Massachusetts had a population of 7,029,917, making it the 15th most populated state, but since the state has lost people, in 2022 the state dropped below 7 million residents, making it the 16th most populated and got passed by Tennessee. Massachusetts had a population of 6,547,629 people in 2010, giving it a 7.37% increase the last decade, which gave it the 21st fastest growing state. A bunch of residents of the state are migrating to the south for warmer weather, which echoes a growing sentiment of the present-day migration patterns. This has given Massachusetts a slow start to the population-wise this decade, in which the population has decreased by 0.7% the last 2 years. With its small size but big population, the state has around 897 people per square mile, making it the 3rd most crowded state, only behind New Jersey and Rhode Island. The state flag is kind of similar to many states, with the state seal on a blue background, but the difference with Massachusetts is the state flag is on a white background. The flag was adopted in 1971, which is about 52 years ago, but in early 2021, State Governor Charlie Baker signed a bill to change the state flag, with the deadline being extended to 2023. Massachusetts is one out of 3 states to feature a Native American, along with Minnesota and Florida. The flag has the state coat of arms, which depicts an Algonquian Native American with a bow and arrow. This arrow is pointed downward to show peace. A white flag is by the Native American's head, with 5 points signifying Massachusetts as a state. This is all on a shield with a blue ribbon surrounding the shield, with the state motto on the ribbon. The opposite arm is holding a sword with the blade up to show the liberty that was won through the American Revolution. Above the shield is the state military crest. The coat of arms is circled by the Latin text, which means the seal of the Republic of Massachusetts. Even with its small size, the state has a number of different landscapes, with the Atlantic coastal plain covering the eastern portion of the state and most of the state's population. As you go west to central Massachusetts, the landscape becomes more hilly and is a more rural region of the state. Near the western border of the state lies the highest elevations in the state, with a sub-range of the Appalachian Mountains called the Berkshires, along with the Connecticut River Valley. Massachusetts' coastline mirrors its nickname the Bay State. The Massachusetts Bay and Cape Cod Bay on the eastern coast, Buzzards Bay on the southern coast, and the smaller Mount Hope Bay on the Rhode Island, Massachusetts border. The most recognizable feature of Massachusetts on the map is the long arm-shaped peninsula named Cape Cod, which forms the southern boundary of the Gulf of Maine. Just south of Cape Cod is the famous islands of Martha's Vineyard and Nantucket across the Nantucket Sound. The entire state was covered in ice during the Wisconsin glaciation, which shapes its landscape today when the glaciers receded. Much of the state remains covered in glacier till and is dotted with kettle-ons, drumlins, excurs, and moraines, which are glacial features. The state's soils are mostly rocky and acidic except for a few floodplains. The Taconic Mountains, which are the sub-range of the Greater Appalachian Mountain Range, straddle the western border with New York. That includes prominent peaks, including the highest point in the state of Mount Greylock at 3,900 feet, or 1,064 meters in the northwest corner, and Mount Everett in the southwest corner with 2,624 feet, or 800 meters of elevation. Massachusetts has the 31st highest point out of the states behind White Butte in North Dakota and ahead of Hoy Crest of Maryland. The Housatonic Valley separates the Taconic mountain range from the Berkshires. There is a belt of steep rolling hills that are a southern extension of the Green Mountains of Vermont that extends to Connecticut. The Hoosiac Mountain Range connects the Green Mountains with the Berkshires. Between the Berkshires from the rest of the state is the Connecticut River Valley, known in the state as the Pioneer Valley. This ancient rift valley appeared in the Mesozoic era when North and South America broke away from Europe. A series of basalt and sedimentary rock and ridges that include Mount Toby, Mount Holyoke, Mount Tom, and others that extend south to the Long Island Sound. East of the valley is an area of rolling uplands with lakes and streams flowing into Connecticut, Merrimack, Quinebaug, and Blackstone rivers. As you move east to the landscape becomes more gently with few hills exceeding 300 feet. The state has an average elevation of 500 feet, which is tied with Alabama, Connecticut for the ninth lowest in the nation. Eastern Massachusetts consists of swamps, marshes, and ponds along with the hills. Aside from the strange blue hills are located just south of Boston, with the highest point being 635 feet or 194 meters in elevation. The coastline of Massachusetts has many bays, coves, and estuaries, which has been a major contributor and one of the reasons that has fueled Massachusetts to what it is today. The coastline is home to a few barrier islands, with Plum Island being the largest. Some of the glacier moraines that was left behind when the glacier retreated rise out of the ocean from Martha's Vineyard, Nantucket, the Elizabeth Islands, and Menominee Island. Massachusetts is the 11th most forested state, with 60.6% of the state being covered in forests, with temperate deciduous forests being the primary biome. The Atlantic coastal pine barrens runs through the southern tip of Massachusetts along with its islands. The northeastern coastal forest has a much stronger presence in Massachusetts, with it leaking into the southwestern parts of the Commonwealth. Massachusetts has over 8,000 miles of rivers, with less than 2% of the rivers being protected by the National Wild and Scenic River System. All the rivers in the state flow into the Atlantic, with the Connecticut, Housatonic, and Merrimack being the most prominent rivers in the state. The Connecticut is the longest river in the state and the longest in the New England region, going through 4 states, which flows from the Atlantic Ocean to Canada. The second longest river in the state is the Housatonic, that flows from the Atlantic Ocean and ends in western Massachusetts. The Merrimack River starts in New Hampshire, and when it crosses the Massachusetts border, it cuts east and runs parallel with the New Hampshire-Massachusetts border until it reaches the Atlantic Ocean. The fourth longest and the longest that is entirely within the state is the Charles River, which moves 80 miles east from the Boston Harbor. The Quabbin Reservoir is the largest lake in Massachusetts and is the primary water supply for Boston, and with 43 other towns mostly near Boston. The lake is 38.6 square miles or 99.9 square kilometers. Most of Massachusetts falls in the humid continental climate zone, which experiences cold winters and warm summers. The coastline falls under an oceanic climate zone, with the transition zone between both lies the humid subtropical climate zone. Massachusetts sees a considerable amount of rainfall, with 47.7 inches a year, making it the 14th wettest state in the nation and the third most in the New England region behind Connecticut and Rhode Island. The state sees even more snowfall per year, with just over 51 inches annually, making it the 8th snowiest state in the nation and the 4th in New England, just ahead of Rhode Island and Connecticut. Massachusetts is the 16th coldest state in the nation, with an average annual temperature of 47.9 degrees. Even though it's on the lower half of average temperature in the nation, it has seen days in the triple digits, with the hottest day being 107 degrees on August 2nd, 1975 in New Bedford. The coldest recorded day ever in the state was a frigid negative 40 degrees on January 22nd, 1984 in Chester, Massachusetts. This gives it the 8th lowest hottest ever recorded day in the country and has the 24th coldest recorded day in the country. This is a 147 degree temperature difference, making it the 16th lowest out of all the states. Temperatures average above 80 degrees in July, with overnight lows averaging above 60 degrees, and temperatures in the winter averaging just above freezing. With the state's location along the Atlantic Ocean, it makes the state vulnerable to nor'easters, hurricanes, and tropical storms. Tornadoes are not really a threat in the state, but it does experience thunderstorm activity during the summer months. Although the state has a hurricane and tropical storm threat, they are not as common, with the state being so far north, but has had a direct impact from a major hurricane 3 times since 1851. Usually by the time hurricanes reach Massachusetts, they have weakened to tropical storms or just thunderstorms. The first known inhabitants of Massachusetts was the Paleo-Indians, who came around 12,000 years ago. They came into the region when the ice melt retreated, in which settlements increased. When traders and early explorers came, they learned much of the continent from them. Before the Pilgrims landed in Massachusetts, Native Americans were the only presence in the state. The state eventually was inhabited by Algonquian tribes, and they lived in lodges called wigwams and longhouses. It is believed that Norse explorer Leif Erikson was the first European to step foot in North America, and it is believed that he landed somewhere in the Cape Cod region about half a millennium before Christopher Columbus did. Throughout the 1500s, European fishermen fished throughout the fertile waters in the area. Samuel de Champlain, a French explorer, mapped the area in 1605, and furthermore, Captain John Smith of the Virginia colony drafted an even more detailed map of New England's coast from Penobscot Bay, Maine, to Cape Cod, Massachusetts. The first English colonizers in Massachusetts were Puritans, who arrived on the famous Mayflower at Plymouth in 1620. There was only one permanent English settlement before the Plymouth colony, and that was the Jamestown colony in Virginia. The explorers of the Plymouth colony were known as Pilgrims, and they celebrated the first Thanksgiving to recognize the first harvest in the New World. The celebration lasted for 3 days and was celebrated by 90 Native Americans from the Wampanoag and the 53 survivors from the Mayflower. The Pilgrims were a group of separatists who had fled from England to Holland to practice their religion without interference from anyone. They then set for the Americas based off the Mayflower Impact, which was signed by the male passengers on the Mayflower. It was never granted a royal charter from the government. They were soon followed by other Puritans who colonized the Massachusetts Bay Colony. Unlike the Plymouth Colony, the Massachusetts Bay Colony was granted a royal charter in 1629. Both religious dissenters and expansions led to more colonies throughout New England shortly after Plymouth and Massachusetts Bay. The Massachusetts Bay Colony banished Anne Hutchinson and Roger Williams from the colony due to religious and political conflict. This ended up being a good thing for Roger Williams because he went on to colonize Rhode Island, and Hutchinson joined later. In the 1640s, the Massachusetts Bay Colony began to expand rapidly and grew to a population of over 20,000 people. They absorbed New Hampshire and Maine settlements as they expanded inland. They also acquired the settlement of Springfield, which moved on from the Connecticut colony. This was disputed for years, but until the 1800s, this established the Massachusetts southern border. They established their own Puritan government in which they handled their own foreign affairs and even began minting its own money. They minted silver coins known as the Pine Tree Shilling, and this lasted for over 30 years. King Charles was II called for the whole mint to be treason in the United Kingdom, in which punishment could have been hanging, drawing, and quartering. The colony pushed forward in making their own coins, in which Charles saw this as treason and enough to avoid the charter. In 1691, Massachusetts Bay and Plymouth colonies were united along with Maine and the islands of Nantucket and Martha's Vineyard to become the province of Massachusetts Bay. Maine remained a part of Massachusetts until 1820, when it became its own state. Between 1692 and 1693, the Salem witch trials took place, in which more than 200 people were accused of witchcraft, with 30 of those being found guilty and 19 were hanged. In 1755, the most destructive earthquake in New England history struck off the coast of Massachusetts and registered between a 6.0 and 6.3 on the Richter scale. It caused no deaths, but caused a lot of damage across the state of Massachusetts, especially Boston, and was felt as north as Nova Scotia and as far as South Carolina. Massachusetts was the heart of independence from Great Britain since the Pilgrims first came. On March 5, 1770, the Boston Massacre occurred, in which a group of 9 British soldiers shot 5 people out of a crowd of hundreds who were harassing them verbally and throwing items at the soldiers. 3 years later, in 1773, the Boston Tea Party occurred, in which the Sons of Liberty destroyed an entire shipment of tea from the British East India Company. They protested this in response to the British allowing China to sell tea in American colonies without taxation, after the Townshend Acts were passed, in which goods imported to American colony were taxed. Before the Revolutionary War, it was mainly Bostonians who were rebellious against New England, but British officials discovered that rural Massachusetts colonists were just as rebellious when Britain passed the Massachusetts Government Act of 1774. This act banned town meetings and appointed royal officials to the government's council. Soon after, in 1774, the Intolerable Acts targeted Massachusetts with punishments for the Boston Tea Party. This was one of the main reasons the 13 colonies' unity got even stronger in the American Revolution breaking out in 1775. The first battles of the American Revolutionary War were in Lexington and Concord, Massachusetts. George Washington took over the Continental Army, and his first victory was the Siege of Boston in the winter of 1775 and 1776, which made the British evacuate the city. The siege of the city lasted 11 months, in which other battles took place, for example, the Battle of Bunker Hill. Cannons were brought from New York and were used to fortify the hills surrounding the city, which led to the evacuation. This was the conclusion of the Revolutionary War in Boston. Massachusetts residents were one of the biggest contributors to the war efforts and some of the most patriotic. Out of the 37,000 soldiers that enlisted in the Continental Army in 1775, almost 17,000 of them were from Massachusetts. Almost every year after, Massachusetts soldiers outnumbered any other state. Bostonian John Adams was a major contributor to the separation from Britain in the Constitution of Massachusetts, which effectively made Massachusetts the first state to abolish slavery. John Adams later succeeded George Washington as the second president of the United States, and his son John Quincy Adams later became the 6th president of the country. From 1786 to 1787, Shays' Rebellion, led by the Revolutionary War veteran Daniel Shays, caused major issues throughout Massachusetts, and they also attempted to seize the federal armory. This armed rebellion was one of the biggest reasons why the decision was made to draft a stronger constitution to replace the Articles of Confederation. In 1820, Maine separated from Massachusetts and became a state due to the ratification of the Missouri Compromise. Massachusetts became a national leader in the Industrial Revolution, with factories producing textiles, tools, paper, and shoes. Before this, the state was historically driven by agriculture before the Industrial Revolution, but it was quickly switched to it in the 19th century. The industries drew labor from Yankees on nearby farms, but later relied on Canadian and European immigrants. Massachusetts was the first slave-holding colony back in the 1600s, but leading up to the Civil War was a leader against pro-slavery. There were still residents who were pro-slavery, which led to protests against the state in 1835 and 1837, but that number increased throughout the years. Massachusetts was the first state to recruit, train, and arm a regiment of black soldiers with white soldiers, with the 54th Massachusetts Infantry Regiment. In 1852, Massachusetts became the first state to pass the compulsory education laws, which makes it a requirement to go to school. With the decline of the Industrial Revolution in the 20th century, that had a major impact on the state. The Industrial Revolution made Massachusetts one of the most urbanized states, along with a large population of low-paying immigrant workers. With the Great Depression, companies moving to the South and Midwest, major industries collapsed in the state, including textiles, shoemaking, and precision mechanics. This happened throughout this 20th century. In fact, between 1950 and 1979, textile manufacturing employees decreased from 264,000 to 63,000. Massachusetts manufactured 3.4% of the total United States military armaments during World War II, ranking it the 10th highest in the country. Following World War II, Eastern Massachusetts' economy moved from the heavy industry to a service-based economy, which reduced unemployment and raised the per capita income with residents. On April 15, 2013, there was an explosion during the Boston Marathon that killed 3 and injured hundreds more and was deemed a terrorist attack. 79.8% of the state's population is white or Caucasian, 12.8% of the population is Hispanic or Latino, 9.3% of the population is Black or African American, and 7.5% of the population is Asian. Massachusetts' economy is a diverse one, with it being a major player in higher education, biotechnology, information technology, finance, healthcare, tourism, manufacturing, and defense. The economic heart of the state and New England is the greater Boston area, with it being a player in venture capital investment and high technology. The state's total GDP is just over $693 million, giving it the 12th biggest economy in the country and is the 12th fastest growing in the nation. If Massachusetts were a country, it would have the 24th biggest economy, just after Poland and ahead of Argentina. Massachusetts offers a lot of opportunity, with it being a top 3 in both per capita income and median household income. Along with many state citizens making good money, the business environment is also amazing and is ranked number 1 in the country. The state is home to many prominent businesses like Baskin-Robbins, Converse, Dunkin' Brands, Gillette, Liberty Mutual, Moderna, New Balance, Reebok, Smith & Wesson, Staples, TJX Companies, and TripAdvisor, to name a few. Massachusetts is home to over 7,000 farms that covers over 491,000 acres. The farms produce an annual market value of over $475 million in agriculture. The state ranks 5th in the nation for direct market sales and 3rd in the nation for direct market sales per farm. It has the highest proportion in the country, with 21.1% of the state's total sales coming from direct market sales. Parallel to that, the state ranks 8th in the country for direct sales per capita. Greenhouse, floriculture, and sod products make up the 3rd of the state's agriculture output. Secondarily, cranberries, sweet corn, apples have a large sector in the state's production as well. There is only 5 states in the country that produce cranberries, with Massachusetts ranking 2nd in the nation, well behind Wisconsin. Massachusetts has the 18th highest property tax in the country, but it has the 18th lowest gas tax in the country. It is 1 out of 11 states with a flat income tax rate and is the 16th lowest sales tax rate. Taxation is widely perceived as out of control in the New England states, but looking at the numbers, it fares pretty well in 2023. Transportation in the Commonwealth is pretty unique, with it having a pretty prominent ferry service. Most ports north of Cape Cod are served by Boston Harbor Cruises, with ferry services all around the greater Boston area. The same services connects downtown Boston to many of the islands located within the harbor. Several passenger ferry lines connect the islands of Martha's Vineyard and Nantucket to the mainland ports in a few different states. Transportation is the single largest source of greenhouse gas emissions by economic sector in Massachusetts. There are 15 regional transit authorities providing public transportation within the Commonwealth, along with 4 railroad heritage railways. Amtrak operates several intercity rail connecting within the state, along with a number of freight railroads operating in Massachusetts. Boston Logan is the only international airport in the Commonwealth and by far the busiest airport. There is around 36,800 miles of interstates and highways within Massachusetts, with I-90 being the longest. Other primary interstates include I-84, I-91, I-93, and I-95. I-84 runs from Pennsylvania through New York, Connecticut, and ends in southern Massachusetts. Massachusetts has the shortest length out of the 4 states it travels through, with just over 8 miles. I-90 is 138.1 miles in length, traveling across the Commonwealth from Boston until the state line. I-91 travels from the Long Island Sound to the Canadian border, traveling through western Massachusetts, with almost 55 miles in the Commonwealth. I-93 travels from Boston to the Vermont border, with 47 miles within Massachusetts. The major I-95 interstate along the East Coast travels through the far eastern part of Massachusetts, with it going around Boston for almost 92 miles, making it the 3rd longest interstate in the state, behind I-90 and auxiliary interstate of I-495. Major U.S. highways that travels the state are US 1, 3, 5, 6, 7, 20, 44, and 202. Most of the interstates were constructed during the mid-20th century and were controversial at the time due to the location of the routes, high cost, and quality of the construction. Massachusetts, along with the rest of the New England region, is a strong Democratic state. Massachusetts in particular has a partisan voting index for D+14, making it the 5th most Democratic state in the nation and the 2nd in New England behind Vermont. The Commonwealth has voted for the Democratic presidential candidate every term since 1984. As each 4 years go by, the percentage of citizens voting for the Democratic candidate has increased almost every time. One of the bizarre things about Massachusetts is how strong blue it is. They will still vote for a Republican governor if they are centrist. The state has a long political history, with the Mayflower Compact in 1620 being the first governing document of the Plymouth Colony. The Massachusetts Constitution was ratified in 1780 during a revolution which was 4 years after the Articles of Confederation and 8 years ahead of the current U.S. Constitution. This means Massachusetts has the second oldest functioning written constitution in continuous effect in the world, just behind the country of San Marino. There are 4 presidents for Massachusetts, giving it the 4th most behind Virginia, Ohio, and New York. John Adams and his son John Quincy Adams were the 2nd and 8th presidents of the United States, and they both were from Braintree. John F. Kennedy was the 35th president, and he was from Brookline, which is the Boston metropolitan area, and borders 6 of Boston's neighborhoods. George H.W. Bush was the 41st president of the United States, and he was born in Milton, which is also in the Boston metropolitan area. In 2023, Massachusetts ranked having the best public schools in the country and was ranked 25th for the higher education. In 1647, Massachusetts was the first state in North America to require municipalities to appoint a teacher or establish a grammar school. The Roxbury Latin School, founded in 1645, is the oldest school in continuous existence in North America, as well as having the country's oldest public elementary school in the Mathers School, which was founded in 1639. Boston's Latin School was established in 1635, making it the oldest existing school in the United States and British America, along with the Governor's Academy, which was established in 1763, making it the oldest continuously operated independent boarding school in the country. Ivy League Harvard University was founded in 1636, making it the oldest college in the country, along with Mount Holyoke College getting established in 1837, making it the oldest women's college in the United States. Massachusetts is home to some of the most prestigious and prominent universities in the world. Both Harvard and Massachusetts Institute of Technology, both located in Cambridge, tops the list of prestigious universities, along with Boston College, Brandeis, Boston, and Northeastern universities. Some of the most prominent liberal arts universities with Williams College, Amherst College, and Westchester College. Boston Architectural College is New England's largest private college of spatial design, and the University of Massachusetts is the public university named after the state. The top 4 universities based off of enrollment are Boston University, with over 32,000 students, University of Massachusetts, with over 28,500 students, Harvard University, with over 28,000 students, and Northeastern, with just over 20,000. I ranked each state by team sports history on my TikTok, so check that series out. You can fly through pretty quickly, and I ranked Massachusetts 2nd in this category, just behind California. Massachusetts has a team in 5 professional sports leagues, with the 17-time champion Boston Celtics in the NBA, 9-time World Series champion Boston Red Sox in the MLB, 6-time Stanley Cup champions Boston Bruins in the NHL, and the 6-time Super Bowl champions New England Patriots in the NFL, and the New England Revolution in Major League Soccer with no championships. Basketball and volleyball were both invented in Western Massachusetts in Springfield and Holyoke. Both cities offer a Hall of Fame for each respective sport, and they are major tourist attractions for those areas. The NHL has a larger development league in the American Hockey League, which is also headquartered in Springfield. The state is home to 2 FBS Division I programs with Boston College and the University of Massachusetts. Division I FCS programs include Harvard, the College of Holy Cross, Boston and Northeastern universities. UMass Lowell and Merrimack also participate in limited Division I sports. Massachusetts is home to major golf events, with the hosting 9 U.S. Opens and 2 Ryder Cups. The state birds are the black-capped chickadee and the wild turkey. The state fish is the cod. The state flower is the mayflower. The state insect is the ladybug, and the state reptile is the garter snake. Massachusetts has multiple state mammals with the right whale, Morgan horse, tabby cat, and the Boston terrier. The state tree is the American elm, and the state dance is the square dance. Cranberry is really prominent in the Commonwealth, with cranberry juice being the state beverage and cranberries being one of the state foods, along with corn muffins, navy beans, Boston cream pie, chocolate chip cookies, and the Boston cream donut. Massachusetts is home to 50 cities and 300 towns, with 7 total metropolitan areas that are all and fall into Massachusetts, with the greater Boston metropolitan area being the largest. The Providence metropolitan area leaks into Massachusetts, with the town of New Bedford and Fall River being a part of it, but most of the population of the metro lies in Rhode Island. There is 14 counties within the state, which is tied with Vermont for the 6th least amount, with only New Hampshire, Connecticut, Rhode Island, Hawaii, and Delaware having less counties. Middlesex County is the most populated county in the state, with over 1,632,000 people, making it the 21st most populated in the country, and the most in New England. Nantucket County is the least populated county with almost 14,000 people. Worcester County is the largest county within the state with over 1,500 square miles land area, with Nantucket County being the smallest with only 45 square miles land area. Boston is the largest city in Massachusetts with a population of 692,600 people and being located at the mouth of the Massachusetts Bay in the eastern portion of the state. Boston is one of the most iconic cities in the nation and is the 24th most populated city in the country. Almost 5 million people live in the metropolitan area, making it the 11th largest in the country, just getting passed by Phoenix recently. Worcester is the second biggest city in the Commonwealth in New England with 185,428 people living there. Worcester is known as the heart of the Commonwealth due to its location in the geographic center of the state. Almost 1 million people live in the metropolitan area, making it the 57th most in the country. Springfield is the third largest city with a population of 155,929 people, located on the eastern bank of the Connecticut River in the southeastern portion of the state. Almost 700,000 people live in the metropolitan area of Springfield, making it the 87th most in the country. Cambridge and Lowell are the fourth and fifth largest cities with a population of 118,927 people and 110,997 people, and both are located in the Boston metropolitan area and both share the county seat of Middlesex County. Barnstable County is the next largest metropolitan area behind Springfield with over 200,000 people and is located on the hook of the state. Pittsfield metropolitan area is behind Barnstable with over 100,000 people living in it and is in the far western portion of the Commonwealth. Vineyard Haven is the smallest of these metropolitan areas with only 17,000 people living in it, and it consists of the island of Martha's Vineyard. Massachusetts usually ranks well in healthcare among states in the country. Massachusetts has the most doctors per 100,000 residents in the nation and has the third lowest infant mortality rate. The state has the third lowest obesity rate and the fourth highest life expectancy rate, showing the residents generally live a healthy lifestyle. The first marine hospital in the nation was erected by a federal order in Boston in 1799. The Commonwealth rounds out with great rankings in healthcare, with the second best in the nation and the 14th best in healthcare quality, and fourth in public health. The Appalachian Trail, New England's National Scenic Trail, are some of the most prominent long-distance hiking trails in the state, along with many others. The Commonwealth manages over 150 state parks, making it one of the highest in the country. There is 18 federally protected areas, with 7 of those being historic sites, 6 being historic parks, a recreational area, and 1 out of 10 national seashores in the country, with Cape Cod National Seashore being the 5th largest, along with 10 national wildlife refuges in the Commonwealth. There is 2 major media markets in Massachusetts, with the Boston and Manchester being the 5th largest in the nation, and the Springfield area having a smaller one. The Boston Globe, Boston Herald, Springfield Republican, and the Worcester Telegram and Gazette are the largest newspapers in the Commonwealth has to offer. Massachusetts is an important center for performing arts, with many orchestras all over. It's also home to a number of contemporary genres such as classic rock, proto-punk, and alternative rock. There is also many museums, with the Museum of Fine Arts and Institution of Contemporary Art both located in Boston. The Kudordov Contemporary Art and Sculpture Museum is located in Lincoln, with the Maria Mitchell Association in Nantucket, which hosts several observatories, museums, and an aquarium. There's also many huge celebrations in the Commonwealth, with the St. Patrick's Day Parade in Boston, Harbor Fest, which is a week-long celebration for the 4th of July. There is also the New England Summer Nationals, which is an auto show in Worcester, and Boston Marathon, which brings in more than 30,000 runners along with tens of thousands of spectators annually. There is many notable people from or raised in Massachusetts, with those being professional wrestler John Cena and Kofi Kingston, Hall of Fame NBA player Patrick Ewing, NFL quarterbacks Doug Flutie, Howie Long, Tim and Matt Hasselbeck, founders of the Bloomberg LP, Michael Bloomberg, and New England Patriots owner Robert Kraft, founder of Barstool Sports David Portnoy, many heavy hitter actors and personalities with Bill Burr, Steve Carell, Conan O'Brien, Ben Affleck, Matt Damon, Chris Evans, Mark Wahlberg, John Krasinski, Amy Poehler, and Jay Leno, to name a few out of many. Inventions that came from the Commonwealth, or at least is believed from here, are the chocolate chip cookie, disposable razors, the telephone, which is controversial, microwave ovens, Bose speakers, the sport of basketball, computerized spreadsheets, rubber tires, Tupperware, the World Wide Web, and the iron lung. Massachusetts has an amazing spot in history and is arguably one of the most iconic states in the country. I have personally been here twice, once just driving around Boston on my way to Maine, and a weekend trip to Foxborough, in which I spent inside New England's Patriots football stadium. Clearly, there is so much more to see and visit, but also much more that could be discussed, and if there is anything you wish I did talk about, leave down in the comment section below for a possible part 2. Thank you everyone so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video, and I hope you learned something from this like I did when I was going over it. If you enjoyed the video, hit that thumbs up button, and while you're there, you might as well hit the subscribe button, because it costs you nothing. Keep an eye for part 7 in my Everyday to Know series, where I'll be covering the 7th state in Maryland. If you love travel and need ideas on places to see, check out my series where I'm trying to visit every corner of the United States, in which I recently discussed my trip to Arches National Park, Utah. Thanks again for watching, and until next time, Roll Geo out.